So we're just going to talk a little bit, get some ideas about endings of lessons. So we've got some ideas, you know, at the beginning, the interview, what are you finding out? What are the movements? But one of the big things, and we've talked about this a little bit, is how we're creating a learning environment, which is really big. You know, both the beginning of a lesson, during the lesson, at the end of the lesson. What are some of the factors we can sort of consider when we're doing that? So we're going to just sort of discuss endings of lessons a bit from here. So this is, you know, what we talked about the other day, you know, when you were talking about what are the things that I want to maybe get people, what is it that they need to learn about learning? What are some of the factors that they can learn to create their own learning environment, that they just don't need me there, but I'm giving them ideas about what are the factors that they can start to create their own learning environment. And this is just as important for us as practitioners. How do we go about this for ourselves? You know, how do we create our own learning environment? So some of the things we talked about were exploring choices and options. That's really fundamental to our idea of learning how to learn. That we've really got different ways to look at something, and it might be you've got a big picture or you're more constrained. How do you still go about this process? So as Feldenkrais would always say, if you've got one way, nothing. Two ways is just yes or no. And in most of our life, for the things that are really important for us, we want much more than yes and no in terms of having options. Developing curiosity. So how are we going about developing curiosity for the people that we're working with, so that they're beginning to ask questions of themselves, that they're going to often need us to generate the curiosity, but how do we go in? And we talked a little bit about that the other day, even during the lesson. Often, if the question's too big that I'm asking, if, you know, it's just rolling the head, what am I looking for, and they've got nothing to make distinctions about, I have to be helping them to make some of those distinctions. And for me, the distinctions are always pretty much in terms of looking for relationships. But first of all, I've got the compare and contrast, but pretty quickly I'm trying to build in a bigger scaffold for them to see the connection between the things that we're doing. That there's an openness to experiment and make mistakes, that's fundamental. And again, where we're working with people, and I'll do some demos on some of these in a minute, is that openness to experiment and make mistakes is very much that there's a reversibility there. Do you know what I mean? That you're not going to put them in a place of, especially at the end of the lesson, they can still be curious, they're feeling different things, but you're not going to take them to a place where they're going to go, oh, I can't do that. No? So it's this ability not just to keep them in qualitative movement and connection, but the reason it's so important is that they feel whole, they feel competent because of the movements we're doing. That they're finding their own pacing and timing. And that we're often at the beginning showing them that this is how slow you need to go to begin to make distinctions. And there's lots more you could put there, but that's what we're doing, fostering a process of inquiry. And as I said, I think that's where we're really different to every other modality. That's one of them. We're fostering a process of inquiry into how we do the things we do. And the other thing we do, I'll get to it, this is a big one, providing opportunities for feedback. Feedback is essential to learning. So we do that every time we take a pause, if you like. There's your opportunity to become self-referencing. But how do people really get this idea? And again, this is the self-regulating part, that if I provide opportunities for feedback and they begin to realise I can decide on what I'm experiencing, what's better for me. Yeah. That I don't have to rely on someone else to tell me what's better. Yeah. Absolutely. And that we give them feedback as well, really positive feedback. You don't see that as much in the Larry lessons, but you watch a lot of the lessons. He, wonderful, wonderful. And you're looking at it and going, oh, well, it's okay what the kid just did. But that's not what he's telling them, yeah? Because compared to where they were, it's wonderful what they're doing. So a lot of people who are really unused to relying on themselves for feedback really often need us to go, you're doing really well. Oh.
From their perspective.
Absolutely.
Or
Elizabeth.
the outside world. They just need it.
Absolutely.
Because singing students are the most criticised population on the planet, the amateurs. That you just have to say, but look at what you've done. Don't look at them. So important.
Really point out again the things they're doing well, because their default is all the things I'm not doing well. So a little bit, as Jen was doing to you yesterday, how can you begin to observe in a way that you go, oh, I do know something. There is something that I'm making sense of. I am developing skills. Yeah. And Mark, butt in any time here with...
It seems to me that it would be hard to step aside and allow the learner to conduct themselves in a way, you know, to not think it's the teacher's efforts so much as the learner's efforts. Does that make sense?
And this is where you're judging where the person is on the scale of learning to learn. And I think I've said to you, you know, you can get people in your practice who are really good movers, but it doesn't mean they're good learners. And just the opposite, you can get people who don't move that well, who have so many of the attributes of learning. Go, Margaret.
I just want to tell you, so Susan Hillier, who you all know, so she's got a PhD student, and I helped her with a small project they were doing, and it was 10 people who'd had a stroke. And a colleague of mine and I, we gave a lesson each a week for 10 weeks. We did a couple of lessons in sitting, and in the third week, we had to get them onto the floor because they had to get on the floor. These are people with a huge disarray of abilities. Anyway, when Jane, my colleague, got them on the floor for the first Monday, it took her 45 minutes to get 10 people onto the floor. When I walked in on Thursday, those people got on the floor in 10 minutes. Now, what it's nothing to do, it was they learnt something. And it's such a wonderful example.
It's a great one. Yeah. Really, really important. And that's where the level of challenge comes in, you know, that Margaret was talking about the other day. You've got to have a level of challenge for learning, because otherwise you don't rub up against your ideas of your beliefs. You can just stay constrained within them. No? Our trick is not to get to threat. And that can be a fine line with people, that I want to challenge them. And what are we going to pay attention to? All those things that you were talking about yesterday with Larry. Is their breathing easier? Are they getting lighter? So that, you know, if they start to go, that I'm not sure. And you go, yeah, but look, your breathing's still going. Your pelvis is still free. Huh? You can still move your head. This is unfamiliar. Or it's familiar, you know, Am I working too hard? What are all the other things that we can bring back to them in terms of feedback to go, you're still on track. You're still doing really well. Because they're going to just get stuck in their, I can't get down to the floor. Go, Margaret, please.
If you could have seen this really one-sided, absolutely disabled man just slither to the floor out of his chair. I mean, it was fantastic.
And he found his way.
His way, and he just, And I was weeping, but anyway.
Yeah. So we don't have to get caught up in, you know, that's, I think, what I loved about Feldenkrais from a very young bit. He's not trying to make you perfect. You know, we need to understand what ideal organisation is to give us an idea of the things we're looking for. But it's not like a small child with cerebral palsy. He wants to make them normal. He just wants them to have all the potential they can in their life. Yeah. And that's the thing. Who cares how they get out of the chair? You know? It's such a big thing to be able to be independent enough to make that transfer on your own. Yeah? So that level of challenge and you've got to, you know, I can remember the first time I taught judo rolls. Talk about level of challenge. I couldn't do judo rolls. And it was like, and I have to teach these and I'm meant to know something about it. So how do you bring it back to what you do understand in it? No? What could you explore in starting to make this easier? So I had to keep bringing it back. Is my pelvis free? Is it connected to my head? Can I still shift my weight? Can I breathe? So in the training, the level of challenge to do judo rolls was so high for me. But boy, did I learn to take care of myself. To take pauses, you know, not to push myself. They're huge learnings for people. Huh? But sometimes we need that level of challenge to push against that. You know, if everything's really safe all the time. You know, it's like I love Margaret gets you to, and she uses this tone of voice. Well, of course you can do it. She's not saying that, but everything she's saying and everything, the way she holds the room, I've got the room here, it's okay. Of course you can explore, which is going to be totally different if I'm going, put your head under your shoulders, take your arm. Yeah. How do we create a self-environment through our self-use? No? Okay, the ability to communicate the basic principles of the Feldenkrais method, which are appropriate to their needs, and that you can give them a concrete example of whatever it is you want to show them. Because that's what convinces people, putting it in their experience. If I go back to your question this morning, so I can't remember who I was talking to earlier. At the end of the lesson, you know, I'd given this lesson and I didn't trust myself. This is early on. And so I'd spend all this time going, in Feldenkrais, it's really good. And you And it took quite a while for me to learn that wasn't helping, because I was trying to convince myself that it was worthwhile to do. Yeah? But how do I come back and give them an experience? Yeah? Developing self-ownership of their learning. Yeah? It's huge. And this is, again, there's lots of ways we can do it. This is, again, the first time we're talking about some of these things, but homework is a huge one here. Now, what do I give the person to do? What am I going to send them with, that's something that they can continue on to keep exploring? That's within their capabilities, but that's interesting for them. Modelling being an active learner. That's, to me, self-use. That's me modelling being an active learner for them. How do I go about that process? I'll show you in a minute. Of showing them I'm going to, I'm still looking for all the things they're looking for. This is a process that we're in. Bridging to other areas of their life. And one way of that is with stories and metaphors. Loose as a goose. Does that have a powerful meaning for you? So would that be enough for Larry to get up and go, oh, I remember there was something about loose as a goose that meant something to me. And that's where I'm really going to be listening to the language they use at the end. No? Often with clients, and again, it's really different. I'll tell stories of how I got involved in Feldenkrais. It's meaning to me. Yeah, what I learned from doing Feldenkrais. If I think they just, need a story or something to illuminate. So that's all and this is what we're doing at the end of a lesson. Yeah? We're clarifying and consolidating the ideas that we were working with in the lesson. So this is not the time. I'll still be exploring options, but not that's confusing. Yeah? I'm not at this stage still asking big questions. I'm really clarifying, really consolidating what they got out of the lesson or what they could get out of the lesson. Really clarifying and consolidating all of these things. So, Mia, do you mind sitting up here? So Mia's just had the lesson that we did this morning. Yeah, that's the lesson I've given her. That's what we've sort of been interested in, which is how can she shift her weight more easily? How can she have more options? Are there more parts of her that are becoming involved in her image of the movement? Yeah. And I go back and I think, I'm a new practitioner. I see everyone bringing the person up from their head. That's what I'm going to do. Because that's obviously how you do it. Even though I didn't get their head light in the lesson, somehow a miracle's happened on the way from them from lying on their back to sitting, and somehow that miracle has allowed their head to get light, so of course I can bring them up from their head. Or somehow in that lesson their arms got really, even though they weren't light there, they got light. And so again, I can do anything I like. So what's the person learnt in the lesson? What is it that you've done, whether it's rolling their head, what is it that they've got an understanding of? So I'm a new practitioner, and I think, okay, Mia, okay. Right? And I'm asking, can you come up to sitting? That's my question. Can you come up from here to standing? Okay, that's my big question, like how do you roll your head? Okay, so my big question is, so I'm going to shift Mia's weight. How are you going to come up to standing, Mia? And I sort of keep hitting roadblocks because I'm a bit tight. And how do I then know, because I'm an active learner, that it's too big, she's not ready for that question? It doesn't have meaning for her yet. She can't get there. I know, of course she can do it. You know, if I don't want to bring, I could just go, Mia, just shift your weight, come up to standing. There you go. So I'm only going to bring someone up from their head if I know it's possible, because I'm constraining them in a way. Does that make sense if I want to bring them up from their head? So if I know that lying on the table, I haven't got the connection really clearly through, I'm just going to say, up you pop. No? And down she goes. So again, so I have to ask a smaller question. So now I'm going, okay, I know. What's the most important thing she has to understand to come to standing? Weight shift where? Forward. No, I can do all the sideways weight shift I like, but that's not going to bring her up to standing. No? I have to somehow get this coming forward. So if that's now my idea, okay, so Mia, and I'm going to be, this is Mia's my client. Mia, let's see what happens if we think about that you have to move forward a little bit to come to standing. So I've already primed her. Huh? So let's see. So you're in here with me and we're finding a way for you to... do you feel that gets a little tight there? Yeah, where do you feel that? Yeah, so how about we go back a little bit? Let's find, is there another way? If I turn your head there, it gets a little easier. So again, I'm not constraining her here. I'm still showing her that she could turn a little bit, she could look up. I haven't closed off the options. No? And then we come a little bit. And we're bringing her weight forward. And I still feel she's not ready. She's pushing into her legs. Yeah. So then I'm going to show her. So, Mia, I think we need to investigate a little bit more. Let's see if there's another way we can do this. So let's try it through your arms. What about if we come through your arms? Does that let you shift your... And she gets heavy really quickly. So I'm not going to keep pulling up. I go, let's try somewhere else, Mia. So I'm showing her we're in a process. What about, Mia, if you lean forward and we think of your chest leaning forward? That's pretty easy. Okay, have a sit again. What about now if you think of coming forward and just think of initiating it from your chest and go for a walk? How does that feel? So I could go anywhere. I could go to a pelvis. Do you know what I mean? I could go, it's a little bit what I was talking about before. Where are you initiating the movement from? Where is it? Because I know Mia can sit to stand. I've just got to find the bit in that makes sense to her. But I'm really fostering a process of inquiry. That this simple thing, so-called simple, of sit to stand, can be a really rich vein. And you do it how many times a day? Sit to stand. So maybe once she gets that idea, if I think of my chest, it's easier. And then I might say, what if you think of your chest and you look to the right? Is that still easy to do? What if you think of your chest and look to the left? Because, you know, I've done it enough with clients and they'll just feel they have to do it in a particular way. No, but how are we trying to open up possibilities for them? And, you know, Marg's, I don't know, Marg, I'm confessing here. There's many lessons when I first started out as a practitioner that sitting to standing saved my life. In terms of I wasn't that clear what really happened on the table. You know, but I knew a lot about coming from sitting to standing, and what were the ingredients that would make it easy. So they'd still go home and go, that was a really good lesson. And I've given them something to go home with that they can explore, that had meaning for them, that made whatever they were doing easier. And, you know, for Mia, she doesn't need it because she's got so much. But for some of them, it's about that they need a different orientation. They need to move their attention more. Yeah? They need to slow down to feel differences. What is it that we're going to really encourage them to do? So again, if you've got a few fallbacks that you know, I know a fair bit about this, just as we did at the beginning of the lesson. So again, it could be that yours was turning. Yeah? And that they were doing that. That's what you did at the beginning of the lesson. And you can see they get to there and you go, okay, so what was it we were exploring? Something about shifting weight that maybe made it a little bit easier. Something about, you get the idea. Yeah? So that we're really giving them, through very concrete examples, what the Feldenkrais method is. Yeah. And it's a skill, and you have to practice it. And try it many different ways. Do you know what I mean? And again, I'm saying the things that have meaning to me. What are the things that you could draw their attention to? Yeah? That you think would be valuable. Yeah? But if I've noticed something or they're talking about something and all of a sudden everything gets light, I'll make them aware of that. Oh, what are you talking about? Did you feel what happened in your organisation? Oh, you just started talking about work. Did you see what happened in your organisation? Yeah. Can we come back here and you could think about work? Would this be a different place to think about work? But as I said, you're clarifying, consolidating, bridging the learning, but you're not moving out of quality. No? So just as I did with Mia, I'm taking it forward. I'm in a process. Oh, no, that's not. Can you feel? You tighten up a little bit there. Let's go back. Find. Huh? So for people who can't make distinctions or don't really understand, the quicker I can get this in to the session, the better. And, you know, Feldenkrais doesn't do this a lot. I'm just saying what's worked with a lot of my clients over working for a long period of time. No, it's really coming back to, we're learning here. This is a process of inquiry that we're engaged in. And as I said, that to me is what makes our work really different. Yeah? And that we're making the concrete, we're making all these ideas, people have got concrete in their experience. Yeah. So, do you want to think about, you can do this in groups of 3 if you want to. You would just want to try sit to stand or in pairs and come up with it that you're working with it in that way, that you've got to find this softness of intention in yourself. It's not about bringing them up to standing. It's about the process of what's needed to make this easy. Yeah, do you want to have a play with that for a few minutes? Where are the parts of them?
Can I come too?
Yeah, sure.